Now, this is really interesting. You will like this because while we are still tackling coronavirus here in the UK, we can go live to New Zealand, which continues to report no new cases at all. Professor Michael Baker is one of those responsible for the success. Michael, it's great to talk to you this morning. Congratulations. New Zealand is the envy of the world. You've done a remarkable job.
Well, good morning, Lorraine. It's great to be on your programme.
It's lovely to see you. Now, we look at New Zealand. Population about the same as Scotland, about 5 million. 1,528 cases only and just 22 deaths. Now, you did get some criticism initially, didn't you? Because people said, oh, you're being too hard, too quickly, this is too strict. Did you even have a little bit of a worry at that time, looking back?
Yeah, it was a difficult time because no one in public health medicine wants to suggest that you have a lockdown, because that's very hard on people, and people lost jobs and livelihoods. And so I think in the end it was also a very tough decision for our government, but I think they did the right thing. They made the right call at exactly the right time, just as the pandemic was really taking off in New Zealand. It was on this exponential rise, and it was switching from imported cases to community transmission. I think just at the right moment, we went into a very intense lockdown. We closed off our borders, so you need quarantine, 14 days of quarantine before you come in. And they put a huge amount of effort into testing and contact tracing. And basically, that extinguished the virus. So when we came out of lockdown very carefully, we came out into a virus-free country about 6 weeks ago. And since then, we've had no local transmission.
Extraordinary. And I know you've got an extremely impressive Prime Minister who at all times has delivered the message with great clarity and honesty, and that's always been the case. And I know you work very closely together. Now, we hear these arguments about economy versus public health, but you seem to have taken this long-term view that actually, in the long run, if you do all of these measures that you've done, the economy is all the better for it. That's
right. I mean, if you take a very decisive action, it means you come through this difficult phase, but you emerge into a fairly normal society. So basically, people are going about their business. We've minimised the health effects. Very few people in intensive care. In fact, we half emptied the hospitals, and basically no one came because the pandemic didn't arrive intensely in New Zealand. And now business is getting back in gear, and we can have big sporting events. People can go out and resume their lives. And that's a big benefit you have if you get rid of the virus.
Michael, what do you think of the UK's handling of this generally?
Well, it's very hard for me to comment on another country because every country has its own way of solving problems. But I think across the whole Western world, and New Zealand was part of this, we really underestimated the virus. And in mid-March, I think we had a really tough choice. And we were seeing the virus basically taking hold in Italy and parts of the UK and Europe and the US, and we were very concerned about that. So we actually looked to Asia for how they were managing it, and particularly, I mean, mainland China did stop this pandemic in full flight, and Taiwan really did an exceptional job of containing it at its borders, and other Asian countries were containing it and heading towards elimination. So we took that path, which is very different from the traditional approach that countries were taking for influenza.
So, I mean, looking ahead, though, even New Zealand can't get complacent. I mean, you're still on top of this at all times, aren't you?
That's right, because, of course, we're still having hundreds of people coming back to New Zealand every day, and they're going into quarantine. And that's still, a big task to manage 6,000 plus people in these facilities for 2 weeks. Of course, what will happen in the future is that we will be able to open our borders to quarantine-free travel to other countries that have eliminated the virus. And that now includes quite a few Pacific islands, most parts of Australia, and a number of countries in Asia. So I think that will be what will happen in the medium to longer term.
Michael, it's Dr Hilary here. I listen with fascination to what you've been saying. Did you come across a lot of dissenters when you went into these fairly strict lockdowns? Did you get a lot of business people, even community, saying it's too strict, don't want to abide by this, because that's a certain problem that we have here?
Yeah, interestingly, the business leaders here were very supportive because they looked at what was happening internationally, and I think they took a lifeboat New Zealand approach, saying, well, we actually want to keep this virus out. So they were big supporters of what the government was doing. Of course, they're also big supporters of coming out of lockdown quickly and opening the borders.
Sure.
But I think we all recognise that most of the economy now is working very well, and the part that isn't, we can't change. I mean, we can't suddenly bring back the international tourists and the cruise ships. They're not coming back for a long time. So in a way, I think we're doing the best we can. And if we had the virus in this country, things would be a lot worse.
No, that's very,
I
that's
guess it
very
is a
true.
question.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
that's true. Now, look, on Saturday here, the pubs are going to be open in England. I mean, as you know, what's happening over here is the rest of the country are doing their own thing, if you like, you know, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But the pubs are going to be open on Saturday. Have you got any advice to the British public?
Well, obviously, large gatherings indoors are a real problem because that's how the virus flourishes, particularly social events where people get very close, they know each other, they've had a few drinks, the music's loud, so they get even closer. And a single person in this pre-symptomatic state can infect a whole room full of people in an evening. So that's a really high-risk situation. I think outdoors, you've got a little bit more benefit of, obviously, good ventilation, and that helps. But you still obviously want to keep some physical distancing in that situation.
What about a glass of Cloudy Bay at home? Do you think that'd be all right?
Yeah, I think so. Highly recommend.
Thank you, Michael.
Absolutely. Michael, thank you so much. I wish you could come over here and bring your Prime Minister with you. And I very much hope that I'll be able to revisit your beautiful, beautiful country. It's like Scotland went on a Keep Fit campaign, New Zealand. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. Thank you so, so much for joining us from Wellington this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.